Hello and welcome to EV Car Share. I'm Matt Smith and this is my channel, if you haven't watched it, about sharing my EV experiences, my life having bought and driving an EV6, Kia EV6. This is around the UK. So it is now coming towards winter in the UK. So we've had our summer. We haven't had our summer. We've had a dismal, rainy kind of season of just wet weather and cloud, to be honest. That'll get all the conspiracists talking about cloud seeding again, won't it? So yeah, kind of, we're supposed to have had our summer. It's now entering winter. So what I wanted to talk to you about is battery preconditioning in this car. You can also relate that to other cars if you want to, if you're just generally looking at EVs rather than looking at this specific one. But it's probably most useful for people looking at the EV6 particularly. So I guess first of all, first things first, let's have a little chat about battery charging and what preconditioning is. That's probably the first thing. What is it? Why do you want to do it? That kind of thing. So when you charge up your EV's battery, there is an optimum temperature range for that battery. It's also when discharging as well, but less important. So between the certain temperatures, the battery will charge at its fastest. And of course, if you are traveling up and down the country, long distance, doing a road trip, something like that, then when you come to stop, you want to charge as fast as your car and the charge point will allow. You don't want to roll up to the charge point, high power 350 kilowatt charge point in a high power charging car like this that can cope with 230 kilowatts, plug them in and then find you're not getting anywhere near as fast charging as you had hoped, just because your battery's a little bit on the cold side, and it happens to be winter. So that's what we're talking about really. What the car has as a feature is it can warm the battery up by heating the coolant that runs around the battery to warm those battery cells up, to bring them up to temperature in anticipation of you charging your battery at a rapid charger somewhere on the roadside, at the services, etc. Note that this only applies to DC rapid charging. This does not apply to AC charging. It does not apply and is not relevant when you're charging at home. When you're charging at home, the power going in is really at a very low level and you're expecting it to take a long time anyway. So you don't need it to be super fast. It's not going to be super fast because your house cannot supply that sort of power levels. And so it doesn't apply to the AC charging at all. That's just that. So that's the reason we want to do it, is to speed up the charging process so that we can get going faster. And the way it works is the car has a heater that heats the coolant that normally cools the battery cells, but this time it will then heat the battery cells. It just transfers heat between the coolant and the cells. And we're doing it to ensure that when we're DC charging on the roadside, we have as short a stop as possible and we can get on our way and carry on our journey. So how do you do it in the EV6, I guess is the next thing. So I have the car on. I'm going to move over to my stare at the screen camera, or my second kind of handheld camera. So let's turn this guy on. There we go. So we have the camera on. I'll try and focus it on the screen as much as possible and not wobble it all over the place. So you're looking at the moment at the default screen on the EV6. This is kind of the home screen, let's call it. And if I swipe that to the side like that, then I get the main menu. Over on this left side, we have the EV settings, so we can tap on that one. That takes us into these EV settings. Depending on how you've got your car set up, you may or may not see your side panel. So the side panel is a thing that can slide in and out, so we can hide that if we want to, or leave it showing. To get to the preconditioning setting, we have a little icon down here, which is the cog or settings, so we can tap on that. And then you'll notice on the left hand side here, we have third item down is the battery conditioning mode. So if we tap on battery conditioning mode, you can see here I have it turned off at the moment, battery conditioning mode, and it says battery mode optimized for maintaining driving performance and shortening DC charging time when driving in winter. So that is the mode that you need to have turned on. So let me just turn that mode on. There we go. Now you don't need to turn that mode on every time you drive. You don't need to turn that mode on and off. You can just leave it turned on if you want to leave it turned on. I will come to reasons why you might want to turn it off certainly in the summer, maybe spring, autumn, later on. But for the moment, we'll just say, okay, you can turn that on, you can leave it on. There's no need to ever change it. That just leaves the battery conditioning mode on. Now, the reason why you can do that is that this mode here is not going to start heating your battery suddenly. I'm sat here, car's on, I've turned it on, my battery is not going to suddenly start heating. It's just putting it into the mode so that it will start heating if there is a requirement to start heating. So it's based on the car having the knowledge and making its own decision as to whether and also when and how much it needs to heat the battery. At the moment, we are not approaching a rapid charger. We do not intend to charge as far as the car is concerned, and also as far as I'm concerned. So it will not be turning itself on. You do not have a manual function in this car. You cannot manually say, okay, heat the battery up, okay, stop heating the battery. That's not possible in this car. It might be quite a nice idea, certainly being able to tell it to heat the battery with an auto turn off when it gets to temperature. That would be quite nice, having that as a button in case you're traveling to a charge point that the car doesn't know about. That would be quite useful. So if we go back to home, that's the preconditioning mode turned on. But how does it know when I'm going to need to precondition the battery? It's only going to be required when I'm on approach to a rapid charge point. So the car needs to know that you are going to go to a rapid charge point. So you need to be using the sat nav. Let us imagine we are going to Glasgow. So we're going a long way. Glasgow, okay, and we'll just go randomly to the centre of Glasgow, and we'll set that as our destination. So now it's going to produce as a route. It says we are going to need to charge. I'll just close that for the moment, and I will check up there the include charging stations. So I'm going to tell it to choose charging stations for me, and it's going to generate my route. So you can see here we have a recommended route. It's going to take 6 hours and 5 minutes, including the charge stops. We're going to arrive with 30%. I've got 80% at the moment. We're going to have a 22-minute stop somewhere near Leeds, and another 21-minute stop, and that looks like it's somewhere near Carlisle. So these are two charge stops. The first one is at chargers that are rated at 460 kilowatts, and the second one at 350 kilowatts. Now the car has a maximum, whoops, didn't mean to tap on there, sensitive screens and all that. The car has a maximum rate of 230 kilowatts, so both of those charge points will be able to supply more than the car requires. So the car should be the limiting factor, and we don't want the car to be the limiting factor because of the battery temperature. We're fine for it to be the limiting factor because that's just how fast the car can possibly charge, but we don't want to arrive cold and then be limited just by the weather. So with that preconditioning setting turned on this journey shown here, it will precondition on approach to this first stop. We will charge to 79% as shown. We'll then carry on our journey across the hills in the middle of the UK here, north of the UK, across the Pennines, and end up around Carlisle, Gretna Green sort of area. And it will precondition again on approach to that stop as well, if the battery is cold at that point. So that is the other point. So the things you need to do, two things that you need to do as a driver. One is have the setting turned on, which I just mentioned. The second one is have the charge stop that you're planning to stop at as part of your route here. It doesn't have to be one of the recommended included charge stops as per the sat-nav automatically puts in for you. It can be one you've added as a tool point down here if that's what you prefer. Add a tool point, search Ionity Carlisle. Okay, so we found it there. If you're adding tool points this way for the preconditioning to work, just make sure that when you're in the search it comes up with this icon here. This shows that the car recognizes it as a plug point. It's not just a point of interest that has the same name or is in the same place. It is actually a point of interest that is recognized as the car, as somewhere you would plug in. So how do we know that it's preconditioning when it does? I'll just start guidance.
The route guidance will start now. In 320 yards, leave the roundabout at the first exit.
Thank you. So over here on your dashboard, when you approach the charge stop and the preconditioning begins in the car, what you will find is down here on this battery icon next to your percentage battery, you will have an orange heating coil icon appear on top of the battery. So at the moment you can see the battery has a little lightning bolt style icon on it. That will be covered up by a orange heating coil icon instead. So the heating coil icon, if you're not familiar with what a heating coil might look like, looks like a spring laid down on its side effectively. But if the icon changes, then you know that's happening. The other thing you will notice over on this side, if you have the side panel on and you are showing electricity use, then you will see some electricity use appear here with the battery care icon. So you can see at the moment I have 0 on this here, because I'm in the car park sat stationary. I also have 0 on the actual driving part of it as well. I've just got my air conditioning and my electronics going while being sat here. So you will see the battery icon being used in terms of power. You will probably see as it first turns on this kilowatt value here go up to around 6 kilowatts. So that's quite substantial. It's quite a powerful heater. You will get 6 kilowatts of power heating the battery, except it's not heating the battery. It's heating the coolant that runs around the battery. So if you think about it, it's going to warm that coolant such that the coolant warms then the battery cells. It provides an even heating of the battery rather than having a heater directed directly at the battery cells. So you're not going to overheat the cells. It's more of a kind warming of the battery cells. It's a definite aggressive heating of the coolant, but it's then a warming of the cells using the coolant. Now, how much is it going to heat? How long is it going to last for? And how much energy does it use? All of this is going to depend on how much difference there is between the current temperature of the battery and the temperature that you're aiming to achieve. So if you are in winter conditions and it's 4 degrees outside, the preconditioning is going to aim to get that battery up to the point where the lowest cell in the battery is 20 degrees or higher. So the lowest temperature. So the cell with the lowest temperature will get to 20 degrees or higher. That's what it's aiming to achieve. So if you're down at 4 degrees, that's a 16 degrees difference. It's got to bring those cells up. If you're down at minus 5 degrees, that's another 9 degrees. That's going to be 25 degrees to bring up to temperature. So it's going to depend on how far away you are. So the colder it is, the more it's going to heat and the longer it's going to heat for. And that's kind of part of the whole package of the car doing it for itself rather than you pressing the button. It knows, based on your route, how long and how you've been driving, how long it's going to take you to get to that charging point. So it's going to be able to anticipate how far ahead it needs to start doing the heating. Now, it's also not going to heat all the way to the charge point. You will notice as you approach the charge point, it's been heating the battery, and then it will stop heating the battery, and it will allow that coolant to cool down a bit, because that coolant is the same coolant that's going to cool the battery if the battery gets too hot during charging. So it doesn't want that coolant to be really warm as you approach the charge point. It's better to get the battery warmed up early and allow the coolant to cool down a bit. So if the coolant needs to be at 35 degrees in order to bring the battery up to 20 degrees, then on approach to the charge point, better to allow the coolant to cool back down to where the battery is at 20 degrees and keep the battery at temperature at 20 degrees than to have the coolant at 15 degrees hotter at 35. Because when you then start rapid charging, and of course we've warmed the battery so that we can charge really fast, so we're now going to be putting energy in really fast, and there's really no sense in having the coolant really hot at that point, because we're going to need to cool the coolant rapidly with the aircon system or some other way in order to be able to cool down, well, it's with the aircon system, in order to be able to cool down the coolant to keep the battery cool. So it's kind of, there's a lot of things going on here, there's a lot at play, and the car does handle it quite well. And it allows the system to warm the battery on approach, but cut the warming early enough that when you get there, the battery is still nice and warm, but it's still ready to cool the battery should the temperature of the battery go too high during charging. Of course, if the battery does go too high during charging, there's not a danger to you or the car. It will just throttle down the speed at which the charging occurs. So it'll just charge much slower. So there's no danger, but it can cancel out all the benefit of having started charging quickly in the first place. And it kind of goes hand in hand with the whole idea that you don't charge all the way to the top of your battery. You charge as much as you need to take you through to the next stop. So like my sat nav was just showing me, charge to 75% or something from 20 something percent, and then get going again, because that's the fastest charging in that center point of the battery. Okay, so that is preconditioning. So I mentioned earlier that I would kind of broach the subject of why might I not want it turned on. So there's an on-off button in the settings. That means that if I've got the option of turning it off, there must be a reason why I might want it turned off. Well, in the summer, when your battery is above temperature, when it's 20 degrees or more, then you approach a rapid charge point. The system isn't going to warm your battery, it's not going to use up power heating your battery because it's not necessary. But in the autumn and winter, or if it's particularly cold on a cold morning in the summer, it may be that the system will heat your battery for you on approach to the charge point. You might not want that to happen because it's going to be using up power. So it's going to be using up energy that's in the battery. That means that when you arrive at your charge point, you're going to be less energy than if you hadn't preheated the battery. So you will need to then account for that extra energy as part of your charging session. And if you're charging at an expensive charging point like InstaVolt at 85p or Shell Recharge at possibly even more, then you're going to end up spending more money in your charging because you are accounting for the lost energy due to warming your battery up. You have to decide whether or not it's important to you to save a bit of money, or whether it's important to you to gain extra speed on your charging. Now, if you're arriving and the battery temperature's at almost there, so it's around 15, 16, 17, 18 degrees as the lowest cell, then you're almost at the fastest charging possible. You're almost at the optimum level. So you're not going to be very far off in terms of the speed of charging, because that's another important thing to realize, is that it's not just about optimum battery temperature and all other temperatures. It's about optimum battery temperature, and then every 5 degrees down is a lesser situation. So if you are if your battery is at 12, 13, 14 degrees, then you will still get relatively rapid charging when you plug into your charge point. It'll be faster at 18 degrees, it'll be faster at 25 degrees, but down at 14, 15, it'll still be relatively rapid. Down at 5 degrees, it'll be much slower. Down at -5 degrees, it gets very slow. So the further away you are from that optimum temperature of the battery, then the slower the charging will be. So you may decide that in winter, when it's down at single digit temperatures or down below zero, you definitely need the preconditioning turned on, because you don't want to have to wait around for a lot longer. Whereas if it's autumn, spring, and you're only just off the temperature of optimum, you may say, well, that's fair enough. I'm planning on waiting around a while anyway. That's the other good point as well. If you are planning on staying at a charge area for a good while, let's say you're going to go and have some lunch because it's lunchtime, or some dinner or whatever. So you're planning on eating and staying for 30, 40 minutes. No point in preheating your battery to allow it to charge in 20 minutes if it's then going to be sat there on the charger not doing anything for another 20 minutes while it waits for you. If the car's going to be waiting for you, there's no point in having the car doing things even faster. So you may decide temperatures about 12 degrees on approach to the charging. I'm going to want to take 40 minutes at this services. I don't want it to charge at optimal speed and also use up extra of my money in heating the battery. May as well just leave it off, arrive, plug it in. It will charge slightly slower. I don't care, because I'm taking my time at the services. I'm taking my time in what I'm eating. Better to do it that way. So it really is a balance in that respect. You may decide that you don't want it turned on until it drops below a certain level. It depends on whether you're driving with family and you're relaxed and you're on holiday and you're happy to take a bit longer time, or whether you are charging up and down the country as a sales rep and you're desperate to get to your next appointment. These things are two different situations and you will treat them differently. So that's kind of my summary of preconditioning the battery. I hope this one hasn't been too long. I've kind of talked a lot, I've spoken a lot, I've put a lot of information in. I'm hoping it's all useful, and that you, number one, obviously understand it all, number two, enjoyed listening to it, and number three, subscribe to the channel and come back and see what else I've got to say, what else I'm doing on this channel. Obviously, like the video, add your comments. Do you precondition? Do you leave the setting turned on all the time? Are you someone who maybe just doesn't rapid charge, so it's kind of all irrelevant to you, but you've watched it anyway? Does your car, if it's not an EV6, does your car have a similar sort of system? Is this system better than your car? Is this system worse than yours? That was something I'd like to know too, because although I'm sharing my EV experiences from this EV6, I have no other EV experiences. This is the first EV car I bought. I don't know what life is like in an ID4 or in a Tesla 3, or is there a 2? Can I think of a 2? There's an iX1, I think, isn't there, on BMW? Are there any 2s out there? Maybe. Anyway, working my way down the numbers. Whatever car you have, I haven't driven it. Maybe yours is better, maybe yours is worse, maybe it's very much the same. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Subscribe, as I say, like the video, and I hope to speak to you again sometime soon. So until next time, bye-bye.